Avengers Age of Ultron, one of the most anticipated movies of the summer, if not the anticipated movie of the summer. Now this is a sequel to, of course, Marvel's The Avengers that came out in 2012, which I enjoyed. Now is it the best comic book movie ever made? In my opinion, no. That still holds on to The Dark Knight. But I still had a lot of fun with the first Avengers. And is Age of Ultron just as fun as the first Avengers? Honestly, I gotta say no. Now, I still had a good time with it, but it's nowhere near as fun as the first Avengers. Now, in Age of Ultron, Tony creates artificial intelligence to protect the world, but it backfires where now the Avengers have to go out and stop the artificial intelligence from destroying the world. Now, this movie is directed by Joss Whedon, who also directed the first Avengers. And I gotta say, he is a very fun director, but I don't think his writing is as strong compared to the first one. Now, the writing in the first one was okay, but this one, the writing was so-so. Now, the story in this movie is solid and strong, but I don't think the dialogue in this movie, for me, worked. And honestly, it kind of felt a little bit stagnant in a way, because yeah, the comedy worked in the first Avengers. Yeah, you can get away with that because that's something we haven't seen before. But with this movie, it didn't feel right. It didn't feel authentic. And I feel with movies like this, we got the epicness, we got the funny goofiness in the first movie. I don't need to see that in the second movie. It was kind of like rinse and repeat in a way when it comes to the jokes and the one-liners, and I really was not feeling it. Now, the action in this movie is there, and I enjoyed it wholeheartedly, but I felt that the action wasn't structured enough where it made me feel like a threat. And look, you got James Spader in this movie, and James Spader's voice acting in this movie is phenomenal. He is intimidating, but the way Joss Whedon wrote this movie, I didn't really feel enough of a threat to make me feel, okay, yeah, I'm behind the Avengers like I did in the first one. And it kind of let me down in a way, because the Avengers is a team where you fight a battle that no one person can withstand. And yeah, you get some instance of that in this movie, but I didn't feel like it was a major threat. With the first movie, you felt that threat. It was an alien invasion. And this movie is like, it was there. It just felt very superficial in a way, for some reason, if that makes sense. And the one thing I think this movie failed, in my opinion, is the fact that when you have the team together, fine. I feel that you should go into what makes a team tick. And I feel that the writing in this movie didn't delve into that. I felt like every person in this movie had story arcs, which is fine, but you can get that in their solo movies. I didn't see a story arc where it involved the entire team. Now, it had elements to that, but it wasn't deep enough where I felt it was like strong enough to say, okay, this is a team that's going through problems. Yes, the first Avengers movies was fun. I expected a little bit more of a grounded type of tone in this movie. Maybe I'm expecting too much of a Marvel movie, which is fine. You expect your lightheartedness, but when it comes to, you gotta have a little bit of darkness into it. And like I said before, they had the elements to it, but it wasn't fleshed out the way it should have been. And I also felt that the story was not as structured as it was in the first movie. Now granted, the first movie had a solid story nonetheless, but with this movie I felt that the structure could have been more of a connected one. And with this one, this one felt a little bit too loose for me. And I think that the structure of the story didn't really gel as much as it should have been. Now, like I said before, I love the first Avengers movie. Is it on the level of The Dark Knight? In my opinion, no. But it's still a fun movie. And with this movie, you had your fun moments to it. Of course, you got Robert Downey Jr. doing his one-liners, which is great, which is perfect for it. But at the same time, you kind of get tired of hearing that all the time. And maybe not from Robert Downey Jr., but maybe from some of the other characters. And the dialogue in this movie felt very stagnant, where it's like, can we get a little bit more of this childish games out the way? Let's get to the serious meat of the movie. And I didn't really get that. I think for the most part, Joss Whedon gets the comedy part of it, but to go deep inside of a character arc or story arc, I don't think that's his strong point. I think he's more of a fun type, action type of director, where it works for the first Avengers, but it didn't work for this one because you kind of, like I said before, you're rinsing and repeating. So it's like, okay, enough of the fun stuff. Let's get to the nitty gritty. And with this movie, you have your fun elements to it, but you also need your darker tone to it. And that's why I think the Avengers with this one kind of fell in that light. And not to say I'm not hating on this movie. I really, really enjoy this movie a lot. But I feel that those flaws kind of outweigh the positive, in my opinion, because with the first Avengers, you got this that oh wow moment, like, yeah, I'm behind the Avengers. But in this movie, there's some battle scenes in there that I enjoyed, but it didn't really say, oh, I gotta clap for that like I did for the first Avengers. Some of the battle scenes in this movie were good, but not great compared to the first Avengers. And that's why I think Age of Ultron, I felt it could have been a lot better than what it was. The trailers look epic. And honestly, by the trailers looking epic, I didn't feel that epicness in here. And I kind of missed out on that. And like, that's why I think the first Avengers is a little bit better than the second one. Now, Joss Whedon said that this was a movie that is a global scale. And it's a great threat. But honestly, you know, you got a threat like Ultron and you got James Spader voicing him. I didn't really feel that threat enough where you can honestly get behind the team. It wasn't a moment where I felt that, yeah, it's a threat, but it's like, it was kind of like a superficial threat. It was like, whatever. And like I said before about character arcs, it felt all like sideshows to a degree. Everybody had their own story arc, but it didn't feel like it was cohesive enough where it worked as a team. It still felt like it was the sum of its parts, rather than the parts being itself, if that makes any sense. Everybody says like Joss Whedon likes to kill people in his movies. Yeah, that can work in this movie, which, you know, spoiler, unspoiler, somebody does bite the dust. But at the same time, though, you really don't care for it because you don't have that character relationship with the audience. If a character dies, you're really not gonna care for the character if he dies or not. And I think if you had like a good few moments in the movie, like a good shining moment like the Hulk did in the first movie, then maybe you would care for that character a little more. But when you don't have those all-star moments where a character to shine, you're really not going to care for the character if he dies or not. And that's where like the writing comes involved, because when you don't care about the characters too much, you're not gonna feel anything for them when they die or not. So it's like, whatever. So I think with Joss Whedon's writing, really held this movie back to what it could have been. Now, granted, I'm not hating on the movie, but I really enjoyed it. But it could have been a lot better. And for the sake of that being, I'm gonna say Avengers: Age of Ultron is not as fun as Avengers, the first Avengers, but I think fans of the movie will enjoy it, but at the same time feel a little bit disappointed. Now, as far as the positives go, like I said before, Robert Downey Jr. is great. Chris Evans is great. James Spader is amazing as Ultron, and I think he's one of the best villains to see since Loki. And I think it's a wild ride, and that's what I think most of the fans of the first Avengers movie will enjoy. So with that being said, guys, I'm gonna give Avengers: Age of Ultron, I'm weighing between 3.5, 4. So I'm gonna give it a weak 4 out of 5 stars. If you're a fan of the first Avengers, you will enjoy this, but you will feel a little disappointed by it, just to say the least. So guys, if you've seen Avengers: Age of Ultron, comment below and let me know what you think of it. Like it, hate it? Do you like it more than the first Avengers, or do you like it less than the first Avengers? Comment below and let me know. And as always guys, please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.